Hello, and this is 4.1 Ethical and Legal Issues in Sports and Exercise Science Research. So the first thing is the Nazi ethical issues. So the Nazis used to experiment on prisoners in their concentration camps. This was before any laws to do with ethical issues were passed. And they would use them for involuntary tests and experiments, and most of them were highly unethical and normally ended up in death of the prisoners. So the first experiment the Nazis did was a seawater experiment. So in the concentration camps, the gypsies were fed only seawater and a bit of fresh water, so the majority of it was seawater, and this was testing for the pilots that crashed into sea from their planes to see if they could survive on just seawater. And this led to the prisoners in the concentration camps having serious health problems, and usually leading to death. The second one that they took part in was the poison testing. This was experimenting different mixes of poisons to find a new execution method for people who got the life sentence, and all prisoners involved died. And all these experiments ignored ethical issues, and there were no laws to tell them it was wrong, and they're also very highly unethical. The next is Zimbardo and Milgram studies. Both of these researchers were famous for the horrific and highly unethical and illegal studies that they carried out. Both of them ignored the human legal rights, leading to experiments being looked down on from people through ethical issues, saying they're very wrong. And Zimbardo studied the effects of putting some university students in a prison setting, and it led to the people in the role of police officers abusing the people as the prisoners. And the experiment ignores deception because they decepted the participants' right to withdraw, even if the participants wanted to quit and stop, they weren't allowed, and legal issues, as this was highly illegal. Milgram studied the conflict between obedience and personal conscience. He studied the justifications of OD genocide by the war criminals at the Nuremberg War Criminal Trial, and this also ignored legal and ethical issues. And experiments led to things like BASES having ethical clearance. BASES stands for British Association of Sport and Exercise Sciences. BASES is a professional body for sport and exercise science in the UK. So what is BASES? BASES is sport and exercise science, is the application of scientific principles to the promotion, maintenance, and enhancement of sport and exercise related behaviours. And they did multiple things. They did the promotion of research in sport and exercise sciences, the encouragement of evidence-based practice in sport and exercise sciences, the distribution of knowledge in sport and exercise science, development and maintenance of high professional standards for these involved, and representation of interests of the sport and exercise scientists nationally and internationally. So legal and ethical issues are a part of this. An ethical issue is an issue that brings systems of morality and principles into conflict. So how people feel about things. And unlike most conflicts, this can be disputed with facts and objective truths. Ethical issues are more subjective and open to opinions and interpretations. So this is more about how people view things and how they feel about things, as opposed to legal issues, which is a point disputed by parties to a lawsuit. So this is disputed by facts and laws. So institute definitions. BASES was just covered in the last PowerPoint. And next is the Institution Ethics and Review Committee. So this is the committee that sort of makes the rules on ethics and what is ethically okay and what isn't. And they sort of make the people who are doing the experiments follow these rules. And if they don't follow the rules, then they can't complete the experiment. But if they do, then that's fine. And ethical clearance is where the researcher has been cleared to do their experiment. So the Institution Ethics and Review Committee have gone through their experiment and looked at like if there's any ethical problems, and there aren't any, and they followed all the rules, so they're allowing them to like complete the experiment. And then there's risk-benefit analysis, so this is where they weigh up the risks and the benefits and see if there's more risks than benefits, then they won't allow the experiment to take place, but if there's more benefit than risks, then they will allow it to take place. So there's participants definition now, so this starts with volunteers. This is meaning that all the participants need to be volunteers, so they can't be forced to do it. Because if they were forced to do it, that would be unethical, so they need to be volunteers for it to be ethically okay to do and for the experiment to be completed. When doing the experiment, the researchers need to give the participants informed consent, so they're told what they're doing, and they're like not, so they explain to them what exactly they're doing and they're not deceiving them at any point. The participants also need to have the right to withdrawal, so if they're feeling uncomfortable or want to quit for any reason at any time, they're allowed to just say, look, I want to stop this. And then there's medical screening questionnaire, so the research needs to complete a screening questionnaire on the participants to see if there's any medical issues that could mean that they're in danger of completing this experiment. And then there's participant disclaimer, where it means that all participants have the right to, if they want to, have their results kept secret and not shown to anyone else. So research definition now, and it starts with equality and impartiality, and this means that the researchers need to treat all the participants equally and nicely, so they don't make them feel bad at any points and aren't rude to them, and they treat them all the same and equally. And then the researcher does have responsibilities as well, so keeping the environment safe and making sure that the test is safe and it's actually going somewhere. And also a big one is deception, meaning that the researchers don't deceive the participants, so telling them one thing but not telling them something else, so it means that they don't know exactly what's going on, which means they're being deceived, and that's bad practice. And there's health and safety that the research needs to carry out, so they need to carry out the health and safety to see any risks and any problems with the experiment that could harm or injure any of the participants. They also need to keep the participants' results confidential and anonymous if they want, so they don't have the right to just tell everyone everything about the experiment if the participants don't want them to. Also the data protection plan says as well that they need to keep their data protected, so the results are kept secret and not shown to everyone. Also scientific misconduct, so this means that the research could be completing the experiment in not a professional way. Next are the consequences, so if they are doing bad practice and they don't make sure that the experiment is safe and has all of those components in, they might have to have some consequences. One of them is ethical training, so have some training on what is seen as ethical and unethical, so they're told exactly and shown exactly what's right and wrong. They might have a prison sentence, which is quite severe, but they'll be arrested for it and put into prison. Reprimand or suspension means they may lose their role or lose their job due to the experiment being unprofessional and not including any of those components. It could cause physical or emotional harm on the participants. They could also receive a fine or being sued by the participants, and they could lose their research credibility and their BASES accreditations. And this is the bibliography, so if you look on the different slides, I have numbers on where I got the references from. This is the second part, 4.1, on scenarios, and this will show the good practice, the bad practice, the consequences and improvement on different scenarios. So the first scenario is an experiment looking into the effects of an ice bath recovery session on young female gymnasts after training. So for this one, for the breakdown, so good practice is that it could include informed consent, So they tell the participants exactly what they're doing. They'll have the right to withdraw. So if the gymnasts are feeling uncomfortable at any point, they can like leave and stop the experiment, and there's no deception involved. So they know exactly what's going on. There's nothing hidden. Bad practice is they could forget to get parental consent, which they need especially for children, to be able to experiment on children. They might forget a health screening test, so they could miss something out, which could end up in one of the young female gymnasts being harmed or getting an injury or being ill at any point. And they might forget health and safety as well, so they might not complete a risk assessment and there might be dangers during the experiment. Consequences: they could be sued by parents if there's something wrong with the experiment, or fined by the law, and also loss of research credibility if they haven't done the experiment ethically correct. And improvements: so you could get a consent form from the parents because they didn't get parental consent. You could do a risk assessment and a health screening test to find out the risks and to find out if any of the participants have any health issues. Scenario 2 is the research looking into effects of using supplements on the performance of young female gymnasts. For the breakdown, so good practice could be health screening tests, so they complete a health screening test to see if any of them have any health issues. They could have this time actually got parental consent and ethical clearance, so they could have been cleared to show that the experiment was ethical. Bad practice could be that they were deceitful and deceptive to the participants, so they were hiding something from them. And scientific responsibility, so they could maybe have not checked if the supplements were safe, or they were giving them too much, for example. Again, for health and safety, they could have missed out maybe if someone could react to the supplements if they have any intolerances. Consequences: they could, for example, have jail time, be sued by parents, or have an ethical training course. And improvements could be that they inform the parents, check safety protocols, and check the supplements to make sure that they are safe. Scenario 3 is testing the effects of extreme weather on the performance of young female gymnasts. So for the breakdown again, the good practice could be that they had the right to withdraw, so they've said to them that they can just leave if they're feeling uncomfortable. That they did complete a health screening test to find any health issues, and that they treated everyone equally. Bad practice could be a lack of privacy, so they weren't private with the data and anything that happened in the test. They didn't protect the data and keep it private if the participants wanted it private, and they didn't take responsibility seriously enough and didn't complete it responsibly. And the consequence of this could be they could be sued by the participants, and because they weren't responsible or had no data protection, the loss of BASES accreditation, or they could have been fined. And improvements for this could they could keep it private, protect the data, and stay authoritative and in charge when completing the test. The final scenario is research looking into whether being rich or coming from a higher class background makes you a better young female gymnast. For the breakdown again, could be good practice, could be privacy. They kept it private as some people might not want everyone knowing if they don't have a lot of money, or even if they do have a lot of money and people might not want them knowing. Professional conduct, so they might not keep it professional. Health screening again to see if there's any risks for health problems. Bad practice could be they didn't treat everyone equally, so they may treat the rich people different to the people with less money. They didn't keep the data protected, and that there was a lack of responsible research. Consequences: they could be sued. They could lose credibility for not being professional, and they could get an ethics training course. And for improvements could be to be fair to the participants, to protect their results, to make sure that if they don't want them ever shown to anyone, that they are kept private, and to keep professional and responsible at all times during the test. And that's it, thanks.